Welcome to the Smithy, everybody. Got a fire all started up here. Come gather around. Warm yourself if you need warming up. Grab a drink if you need cooling down. We'll start this stream like I've done every stream so far, and get ourselves another key ring for the craft table. Leaf key ring, of course. I want to say hello to any new viewers out there. I keep letting people know this is something I do as a hobby, and I love sharing it with folks. So I expect some new folks dropping in from time to time. And welcome back anybody who's already been visiting me regularly. I know my most regular visitor, Kevin, aka Trail Dust, isn't going to be joining us today because he's busy doing really cool horsey things. Things I don't know enough about to speak intelligently. We'll go ahead and switch over to the anvil. Warm it up just a little bit more again. And get the brush out because it's been sitting in there for a bit, so it's already probably build up some oxide that we can brush off. Some forge scale instead of forging it into the metal. Typically it just pops off as I'm working it, so I don't have to do that a whole lot until the end when I'm ready to see the final piece, and having a bit of forge scale impression isn't horrible. But right now let's just take a look at where we're at. You can see I've got a bit of a two-sided taper already on here from how I finished things off last week. So all I got to do is clean that up, which I should be able to still do right now. Right here at the edge of the handle. There we go. Now that's ready to set off so it can become the leaf part. Anybody who walks into this the first time, know that I'm always making these leaves. Anybody who's been here for a little bit might be asking the question, why in the world does he keep making these leaves? Well, there's two answers to that. One is, it's an extremely good project as a beginner to hone multiple skills all at once. Number two, it's nice to have something that I come out of this with that I can actually put on a craft table. Let's get some lights on in here. I always put that off until the very end so that I'm not wasting my batteries. Anybody that's been following me knows there's no electricity out here except for the big old EcoFlow Delta I bring out and the various battery powered things I have. Hey Paul, 2 a.m. My goodness. Yeah, I'm looking to see about doing a later show in the evenings during the week to hopefully catch some folks out in the Aussie area, that side of the world. And I haven't decided that I'm ever going to do a show any earlier. I might. I'm up early enough. And about to burn up my material talking and not paying attention to what was going on in the forge. Let's see how bad I did. Well, I burnt off the tip, which means I have to reforge my taper. There's the taper again. see some of that forge scale that got on there while I was busy running off at the mouth. Yeah, you're one of my my followers and friends in that side of the world where it's already tomorrow. So glad to have you drop in, but I understand not sticking around. Like I said, I'm thinking about getting out here weekdays. Not sure what weekday yet. I'll turn on the cameras, but we're in the time period here in the Pacific Northwest where the weekday is really long. We get to a point where we have just under 8 hours of night, of supposed night, but while the sun sets at supposedly a little after 9 o'clock here, I still have light to work by until 10. So it would make some sense to get out here and do some evening stuff. I just gotta get over the my brain is tired hump and get out here and do something that makes me physically tired instead. So keep an eye out. I'm going to try to make something more convenient to you there, Paul. And I'm going to turn down my volume just a little bit because either I'm being really loud or the mic is doing an excellent job of picking things up today. All right. But as far as the leaf is concerned, that's two reasons I've given. It's a very good skill building thing, and it's a very good craft table thing. And then the third, of course, is I need something here that you guys can see as a repeatable task, number one. Because you don't get good at something until you can do that something consistently, repeatedly. And we've heard about the 10,000 hour rule. Wow, my forge is hot today. All right, so we're gonna go over here. We're gonna set down the back side of the leaf, and we'll do that on the opposite sides of the set down. I mean of the paper. Then we'll go over here, and we'll blend that shoulder I made into the rest of the stock, because that then becomes the stem. I'm going to start working on that stem. All right, we're into the black. It's probably small enough that I could probably continue to work it a little bit, but I'm not going to. Thanks, Paul. All right. It's also a good demo task. So it can seem really repetitive, but you also get to see that you know, the processes, while they'll be the same, the outcomes can differ. That's part of doing anything that's artistic. And not to be shied away from. Now I'm seeing that there's a difference in the way that got set down. I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. There's a chance I could actually damage it by trying to fix it. Let's get it warm enough. I'm not adding stress into the system. Too much stress anyway. Stress is where bad things happen. Things get fragile and want to snap off. I also like this task because it's something I can do, I can demonstrate, and it doesn't require special tools to do so. All right, yep, there we go. That's better as far as making something that's going to have an even set of lobes. So I was able to fix it. Good, good. Let's get her hot further back. So the only tool you need is a surface to hit upon, a thing to hit with. You can actually work the metal with a long enough rod that, like you can see here, I don't need tongs to do this. So that's another reason it's a good demo project, is I'm trying to make this something that's approachable by people who aren't sure if they can actually do this. Okay, people might be able to see in the camera that I am moving around a piece of something that I think is a piece of metal. No matter what, I'm pretty sure it's a piece of slag. Right here. I'll bring it out of the fire. And for this, we will use tongs. It may be some of the metal I just burnt off mixed in with some of the coal, or it could actually just be a hot coal. It was hard to tell because it was sticking to my piece of metal, and it was very hot, whereas the metal was cold. So I was kind of concerned. It was probably just a good piece of hot coal. All right. But the point is, all you need is the fire, a hammer of some sort, typically because it's better than hitting with a screwdriver, and a hard surface to hit upon. You don't have to own an anvil. You could just get a piece of railroad track. You could go get an I-beam. You could use an engine block. Depends on what your best sources of lumps of steel are. But guaranteed, it's very rare to find a lump of steel that costs as much as an anvil, because an anvil is a specialized tool. There's a reason I prefer an anvil, but you can't let that be an excuse for not starting up a hobby, to not have all the tools. You can't make an excuse that you have to first be able to afford to buy all the tools. Nobody starts, well, nobody is is a generalization. We know generalizations are bad, but practically nobody starts with a power hammer in their shop. There we go. Now we're back to cooking with coal. And the skill that I'm doing right now is known as drawing out. It's also referred to as fullering. And the reason is you use fullering dies to do the task. Okay. Well, now, let me explain what that means. Set that here. Actually, we'll go ahead and just let it keep warm in the fire. I'm going to show you a pair of fullering dies. They're rusty because I didn't maintain them properly. I'm still learning myself. This is what's known to as a smithing magician, and it's not made for this So I'm going to have to do some work to make it so that it is made for this. It's made for my other anvil over here. But these are fullering dies. And what a fullering die is a rounded area. Now, the work I'm doing right now, I don't need fullering dies like this because I don't need to control the top and the bottom very explicit, to high tolerances right now. What I need to do is just move things. This is much better used in the tool. You see the roundness of them. This is much better used in the tool when you have high tolerances you need to meet. And so you start with this and you then do some cleanup work. But the roundness causes things to work like when you pinch a toothpaste tube. It pushes in the two different directions, this way and this way, away from the curves. If it had been a rounded area, like on my rounding hammer, it would push in all directions. The edge of my anvil is radiused, so that is a fullering die. And if I use the flatter side of my hammer on one side, half on and half off the anvil, I am creating a fullering die on the bottom side of what it is I'm trying to spread lengthwise, which is exactly what you're seeing me do to make the stem. So now you know why I start with this every time. It gives me multiple different skills one needs to have to progress as a blacksmith, all in one project. Let's take a look at this and see how close we are to getting all the way across. We're getting pretty close. All right, we'll use filler a little bit more and make sure to stay on just two sides doing it. That way, I have my taper for the next time we do this. There we go. Come over here, do some cleanup. We're almost across. Next, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit longer. So I have to heat up that area. Taking care not to overheat it because it'll just burn right off real fast now. You guys hearing all my wildlife out there? If I had started just a little bit earlier, you might have actually gotten to see my donkey too. She was busy helping me with the cameras. Helping being a relative term, of course. She and my goat are out now walking this pasture area out in front of me in the same area that my chickens are. My chickens are in very large chicken runs, respective to their size, so that the coyotes don't get them. But with the hope of allowing them to feel free-ranged. All right, let's go ahead and thin this out just a little bit more. Which will make it longer again. Let's see, there we go, all the way across. That was my goal. Once I get it all the way across, I'm done with drawing out. And now it's time for me to round it. So let's get it in there, warm it up, put her on the diagonals, and take off the corners. Actually, while it's still, and I'm actually starting to feel the heat up in here. So this is truly, I said it last week, but this week it's coming for certainty. This is truly going to be the last time I can do this with this rod without wearing a pair of gloves, or without wearing a glove. So, but with a good pair of welding gloves, which is probably the first tool you should get yourself outside of a hammer and a block, and then use sparingly so that you can always remember the first rule of blacksmithing, which is, if anybody's out there, they can put it in, drop it in the channel. I'll give it a beat and let you guys do that, and then I'll state what the first rule of blacksmithing is, something I will do every live stream, much like John with Black Bear Forge reminds you to wear your safety glasses, which I completely forgot to grab this morning. Damn it. Let's see. And the reason I don't use these is they just don't fit over my normal glasses the right way. Well, John Switzer always says to remember to wear your safety glasses, and I have never worn my safety glasses as a blacksmith because I was doing it dressed in Ren garb. And so that was the one bit of safety gear that I couldn't replicate in some way. And it just hasn't been a habit I've formed very well, but I'm trying to take it to heart. Just today I forgot to grab them as I was getting everything ready. Instead, I waterproofed my boots. A little bit of mink oil. I'm running it back and forth right now on the fire because it's going to be very easy for me to burn this metal if I'm not careful. All right, let's take off the corners. Turn it to the other corner. Take it off. Of course, it twisted on me. And I can explain why that happens. It doesn't mean that I've gotten very good about figuring out how to prevent it. You can see in the process I'm taking off a little bit of the corners on my leaf, and that's not bad because it'll cause a nice transition between the leaf and the stem. But the reason it happens is, unless you're very good about hitting directly on top of the corner to the corner on the bottom in a straight line between the two, you're going to be off just a little bit and it'll want to roll. And that's not good if you're, again, trying to do precision work. But as I'm trying to make a rounded stem, and nature isn't about precision. Honestly, nature is about idiosyncrasies. It results in evolution. It results in diversity, which allows for better properties to propagate. It allows for all sorts of neat things. It allows some animals to not be seen while others are, so the species goes on. And a lot of different reasons diversity is really good. Nobody said we had to all agree with each other, but it's good to have different ways of thinking about problems. So what we really all need to do is listen to each other, respect each other, value that there's a difference there, even if it's not a difference you agree with. Now, as long as the differences aren't you shouldn't exist. Or the differences are you shouldn't be treated like another human being. Gotta remember, even spiders have purpose in this world. You might not want them in your house, but they have purpose. Again, let's not overheat it. Continue our rounding here. And this isn't about wailing on metal. People always ask me, this must be a very cathartic process. And I'm like, it can be. It's a very peaceful process in my head. But not because the hitting something makes me peaceful. It's because you have to think about what you're doing and be in that moment and no other moment, or else you're going to end up hurt or with something that doesn't really match what it was you were aiming for. The other thing people always ask me is, what kind of blades do you make? And I have to remind them that there are two related crafts: blacksmithing and bladesmithing. Blacksmithing is what the folks did primarily, and that was to make functional and or ornamental stuff. Bladesmithing is what the same people did when they were brought into war. And some were good at it, and some weren't. And some didn't really want to do that kind of work at all, whether it's because they're not into war, or, in my case, they prefer the actual art of blacksmithing, not the tedium that goes into bladesmithing. Bladesmithing is a very tedious thing that you don't get to see much of most of the time. You oftentimes see the blacksmithing part, and then you see a reference to the fact that there's grinding and sanding and polishing and grinding some more and sanding some more and polishing some more, and that doesn't even count the handling and so forth. It's a tedious process. All right, we've made a stem. We're going to make a leaf. Hi, beautiful. So bladesmithing, is something I do from time to time, but it's not the principal thing I do. Number one, it would require me to spend more time in my garage with my belt grinder. And yes, it can be done with a regular belt grinder. You don't have to have a 2x72. Everybody tells you need one. They're probably not wrong at that it makes it easier. But again, I'm trying to tell everybody you can do these things without special tooling. All right, we got a nice hot thing that's going to become a leaf. So let's make it a leaf. First, we just smack it. Get it down to a nice thickness, about the same thickness as the stem. And then we come over here and we try to give it some definition by pulling the lobes out and aiming at an angle to make a raised area in the middle. Make sure I don't have any places that I've... All right, so there's that. I think I got that just a little bit too thin, but not a big deal. Now we'll go ahead and we'll sink it in my stump over here. Let's see if I can bring you over so you can see that process. Assuming my cables reach. All right. Went too far. There we go. That's what I'm looking for, right there. What you'll see is this spot right here. There's another one like it right here. What I'm going to do is grab my little ball peen hammer. I'm going to peen it down into that while it's hot. And basically the wood gives wherever I hit. So if I do it right here, for example, it'll create a new swell. I might do it right here just because this one's getting really deep at this point. So let's get her warm again, which won't take any time at all. Now a lot of smiths will take the time and break out a chisel to put in marks where veins would be in the leaf. And I do that from time to time, but today I'm not going to. I really want to work on another project that I've been working on, get that one finished up. Now I already lose enough time when it comes time to make the loop. All right, we're going to go over here. Let's see. See how it just bends around in there? Wherever I hit, and yeah, it creates a lot of smoke, but I'm not afraid of a little bit of wood smoke. That was my primary fuel, wood and charcoal, until I discovered how cool coal is in getting this work done. Or I should say how hot coal is in getting this work done. Bring you back over here, show you what I finish with, which is just to take the tip and bend it back the other way. You know, assuming it wants to actually be hot enough to bend, which it looks like it is. You can see we've got a bit of an organic look in the bend of the leaf. So now we need to work on getting it off the bar in a pretty fashion. So let's go get that done. Put the hammer back because tool keep up is important. I'm not always good at it. For anybody new here, you'll know that one of the reasons I've discovered coal is awesome is, yes, of course, it's because it gets really hot, but the other reason is you walk away from the coal long enough, unlike charcoal, it doesn't keep on burning. You just come back, it ends up going out unless you have air flowing through it. And you just come back. Let's go ahead and winnow that down just a little bit tighter. Round it on the fly. All right. Get it hot. Let's see about twisting it off. Need a pair of tongs to twist with. Now, the twisting it off part, you don't need tongs. You could do it with a pair of needle nose pliers. So just get into your existing toolbox, assuming you have one, and you can do it. Or instead of paying $80 on a pair of tongs, go pay $15 on a pair of needle nose pliers, or just regular pliers. Harbor Freight's your friend there. Do they make great tools? No. Do they make cheap tools? Yes. In this case, that's what you need. It's a cheap tool if you're just getting started and are worried about the cost of all this. So all I'm doing is twisting it back on itself. And the metal is going to fatigue. Stress, remember, it's going to fatigue and just snap off. And there you have a pretty scroll, or at least the start of a pretty scroll without having to actually do scroll work at that point. Now I'm going to do some scroll work. All right, I'm going to cool this off. You would not do this with water hardening metals. It's a bad idea. Or if you were, you definitely need to bring it up to temperature again. Probably not too fast. But this is not tool steel. This is not hardenable. And therefore, you're really not introducing a whole lot in the way of stress into hot or cold rolled steel. The stuff you commonly see at your big box stores. So let's go ahead and heat it back up again. Can't let go of it now. And yes, again, this is why I say you don't need tongs, but you're going to need at least pliers and probably a pair of welder's gloves. And I do recommend getting a pair of the welder's gloves because while you probably shouldn't wear them all the time, and the answer to that question about the first rule of blacksmithing is all metal is hot. And the reason you shouldn't wear them all the time, I witnessed with a dear friend of mine who came over to try her hand at this, and that is she kept forgetting all metal's hot. She kept touching the metal with the gloves, against her coat, etc. It's very easy to forget you shouldn't do that. So I'm going to loop this around this way for a change. All right. And so I don't recommend wearing the gloves all the time. You know, my brother has asked me about why I don't use personal protection. And my answer is that. It's very easy to forget when you're wearing personal protection that you're doing something that's dangerous and to take appropriate precautions. That does not mean not to take protection, to not have your protective devices. Like, you really should do as I say, not as I do, and have eye protection. And I will as well. So, and right now what I'm doing is using the horn to shape the bend the way I want it to go. All right, let's get her back in there again. Again, I can't let go of it. But in this case, and in other cases, there are specific cases where the gloves are really useful. If you're needing to use a chisel that is not a long chisel, because long chisels are great, but sometimes hard to control. So you might want a shorter chisel, but then that brings your hand closer to the heat of the object you're working on. Now what? The answer is have a glove. So I want that going in that direction to continue that whole tendril bend look. go. I think I'll actually use my scrolling skills rather than my scrolling tong to give it a bit more of that. Need to heat it up some more first. And so the best way to handle that is wear your welding glove on the hand that you're going to hold the hot chisel, or hold the chisel down near the hot item. In this case, you don't have a pair of tongs to keep your hand out of the fire, or in real close to the fire, like here, because you're holding a pair of needle nose pliers. Then having that glove can make it tolerable and less likely that you'll catch yourself on fire. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Nice little tendril curve. Now we can continue this loop back the way I want it to go. Now let's see if I can get it in the fire in a way that makes it so I can heat the area I want, not the area that I don't want. And this one's taking me a lot longer than I normally take. Been gabbing too much this time. All right, there we go. There's the way I want it to go. Use this to get it near where I need it. Nope. Get everything on the same plane because it'll just work better that way. All right, we're going to have to heat up. You can see in this one, in the fire view, we're going to have to heat up this area to get the bend where I want it. But I don't want to unbend this. You'll see in a minute that I end up quenching that and cooling it off. In other words, you'll see it all hot and then you'll see it not hot there at the curve, and you'll understand why now. And that's because I'll take that curve over to the barrel and quench it off to prevent accidental bending in directions I don't want it to go. Much like you can see the hot spot in the fire, I can see the hot spot in the fire, and I'm aiming for it with my piece of metal. Taking care not to overheat it. All right. I accidentally cooled off some of it that I didn't want, but cooled off. There we go. That is a nicely finished product. In the long run, I don't need it to be all planar. I also don't need a perfectly round circle because I put a loop on this. But I do want it to look like naturally went that way, not that it was kinked in that direction. So I just go in here and try to make a more smooth curve, and I think that's good enough to put on my craft table. I wouldn't be ashamed to have it there. And that's the key. When you're making these things, do you want to get perfect? I mean, perfect might be your long-term goal, but you don't have to be perfect when you're starting. You just have to be proud of what you've accomplished. And then be critical. Not so critical that you throw it away. It's still going to go on your craft table. But critical enough so you know, what can I do differently next time? What were my challenges in getting it done? What am I proud about in this one? My pride in this one is that I got this scroll here looking really sharp. I still struggle with getting, I would like this to be more of a rounded circled loop, just because I want to say that I've got that skill. To know that when I want it to be a rounded loop, it will be a rounded loop, instead of what it is right now, which is when I want it to be a rounded loop, it might be a rounded loop. Let's go ahead and, yeah, we need to heat it up just a little bit. It needs to smoke a little when it's doing that, or else it's not getting into it's not necessarily getting into the pores of the metal. So I saw something on Steve Moss's channel, I think is the name of the channel, yesterday, that was very interesting. And it was talking about a self-healing polymer. And before he went talking about the self-healing polymer, he took a moment to talk about why aren't things self-healing. And he went and notably pointed at metal, because when you break a piece of metal apart, you really just have two pieces of metal. So why is it the two pieces of metal don't just join back up as one piece of metal again? And it turns out there are multiple reasons. I could tell you some of them. But the one that he brought up that was interesting was this becomes two pieces of oxidized metal. So you just had fresh steel when you cut a piece of steel into two pieces exposed to the air, which means immediately that metal oxidizes. Now, you're familiar with oxidation as in rust. And when you pay attention to my channel, you'll see all this black flake that comes popping off the metal. I'll pull some up here on top of my anvil. There's some of it inside the wax I'm using. That's not coming off of this metal I'm touching or other metal I've touched, but instead off the same, because this is a lump that came into existence as I was separating a piece off of a big old piece I have. And I didn't want to waste the stuff that had melted and dripped off. And instead I collected it up, and now I could use it like this for a time. But point is, when you see fresh metal, or what you think is fresh metal, you're already seeing a piece of oxidized metal. The oxygen has bound with the actual metal component that you thought was, you know, pure steel or pure copper or pure aluminum. So that's why when you put the two pieces back together again, what you thought we were putting two pieces of raw metal back together, why didn't they just form the bonds again? And then the answer is they can't. They've already got oxidation on them. When we forge weld, what we're doing is getting the metal hot enough, and all metal in this way, is so that it reflows and it lets loose of that oxygen bond and allows the metal to touch metal again and become one. You know, we at least hope it does. So I've put it back in the fire again, just like with a cast iron, to let it bake a little. You'll see it smoke a bit. And while it's doing that, I'm going to get a drink as soon as I figure out what I did with my drink. Ah, there it is. Surprisingly, I didn't drop anything on that series. That's our little drinking game on this. You drink your beverage of choice. Cup of coffee, glass of milk. Water's a really good idea as the heat's starting to come up everywhere. Crazy amounts of heat. Thanks in no small part to something some people consider fictitious still. My folks and my friends in France will disagree with you very strongly now, that they have experienced on days that normally get to about 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius, they saw 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit. That is crazy hot. That is hotter than we typically get here. I'm sure that it's hotter than they typically get there. I've got family down in Texas that have seen crazy temperatures as well. Even in a place where people think of as being a hot place, it's not supposed to be so hot right now as it is. So again, I'm using a rag like a pot holder to basically rub in the remaining beeswax. And yes, this is hot, but like a pot holder, you can deal with that by having multiple layers, which I do, and not touching the metal directly. I'll just go ahead and set it down there. I think that came out quite pretty. I don't know what angle's the best angle on that, but there you go. And let's get the next bit of iron into the fire. Oop, knocked over my sign. My sign that my buddy Earl made for me. Isn't that awesome? All right. We'll go ahead and put this in here for now. I don't know if I'll need it, but we'll see. When we left off last week, I finished up. This one is in a finished state. This bevel here that I hadn't forgotten to put on is now on there. This one is nearly finished. I think I will do a little bit more rounding of this part of the handle just because I'd like it to be smoother and prettier. And then this one, I need to get some straightening in there, and I need to finish the ball end and then round this part of the handle as well. So let's get to doing that. And then once I do, we'll put some holes in the boss. So let's do some definitional stuff here for people who are new to this. This is the bit. The part that holds onto things is known as the bit. This is the boss. It's the area that the hole goes into, that the rivet goes into, that the pivot spot happens. And then these are the reins. Ball ends are optional. I'm putting them on because I want that experience of making ball ends. But if you saw my previous tongs, you'll see that I used just splayed ends. And that's all just so it can hold on to a tong clamp if it should slide back on the handle as you're working. All right, let's get this in the fire. Ah, that's the other thing I should probably do is knock off edges. Knock off corners, I should say. I'll do that in a little bit. But first, let's get this in here. Let's see if we can finish up a ball end. And you can see the fire was working on its extinguishing itself as I worked on the other stuff, and it didn't need to have any air push through. It was cooling itself right off. Let's get some things out of the way that we don't need in the way while that's going on. Don't need the tong clip up there right now. Don't need this up there as a comparator. And in a minute, that piece of thin metal will be cooled off enough that I can touch it. And I'll put it in my pocket so I don't forget to take it in with me. Hope the stream is coming through to everybody okay. I have gotten notice from Restream.io that occasionally it looks like there's a reason to be concerned. But so far, nobody has told me that it's a problem. Good, we're getting nice and hot pretty fast actually. So, must mean I'm in the right place in the fire. Let's get it back in there. Now, sharp eyes will have noticed that the lump on the end of this rod is not centered on the rod. And that's on purpose. It's hard to actually work a piece of metal down while keeping the other piece of metal large if you try to do it from all sides at once. So you only work it on two sides at once. Then, when you get to the point we're at now, you can start moving things where you need it. So the first thing I'm going to do is start knocking off corners where I don't need corners. We'll go over here. You can see an anvil is used on all its faces, not just the top of it. And now you can see that I get to start moving the ball where I want it. Got to take care not to add fractures into the situation. We'll go ahead and heat it back up again. Ah, thank you for letting me know. You just watching it, or is Dad watching too? One of the other reasons I love coal is I don't have to feed so much fuel in. You've noticed that is the first time I've pulled fuel on top of my fire and all this, because it doesn't just burn up. right. We'll go ahead and feel this with the back of my hand. Yep, it's cool. Into my pocket. Over here, let's get this where it's supposed to be. We'll center it. Nope, that's right. We want to center it this way. And we want to center it this way. And now you can see that's more centered. Then we start pushing metal back into itself, also known as upsetting, to start getting the shape we want. Here comes the rain again. That smoke is because new coal is getting cooked from me pulling it in. It's also why you see flame. The volatiles are cooking off, and the volatiles oftentimes cause that flame to sit on top. But once the volatiles cook off, the flame goes away. And if I don't keep the air on, we don't keep a fire going. It's time for our Motrin. Ibuprofen. We're not getting any brand loyalty here. Not unless they pay me. Call me. I'm working on making that nice and hot so it's malleable. Any hotter than that, it's going to get to the forge welding temperature. And that's not awful at the moment. There we go. Look how bright that is. And yep, forge welding temperature. Now, trick question, how many directions do you have to hit on a lump of metal to make it round? The reason it's a trick question, the answer is all of them. The more time you're willing to put into it, the rounder it'll look. Right now it's looking a little oblong. My thumb just got a little too close to the hot spot. Didn't burn myself, but I knew I was gonna if I didn't watch myself. All that metal oxide popping off there. The more sides you hit it on, the rounder it'll look. And the one thing that I see is it's looking more like a grape than a circle. I think I can solve that by introducing a flat side to it and then working in the corners on that. To do that flat side, I'm going to have to come over here to my let's go ahead and see how flat we are. We got ourselves an arc in there, and we got ourselves an arc in there. We'll work on those in a little bit. We're going to come over here to the vise, post leg vise that I got here. Lock it in there. I'll bring you over so you can see what I'm doing. Lock it in there and work on it from the end. Let's see, am I going to get in the way doing this? Nope. Over here. Which way do I want to do it? I want to do it from this side so you guys can see it. It won't be the most convenient thing for me, but I'd like you to see it. I should have said y'all instead of you guys. I got at least one female viewer on here, my wife. Some argue that guys is not an inclusive term, and I kind of understand that statement considering I've performed in a show called Guys and Dolls. There's all that smoke. Which is an indication I'm getting good airflow, because if I stop, back comes the flame. I have to say, a lot of people have their opinions on which type of tweer is the best tweer. Side blowing, bottom blowing. And all the bottom blowing tweers I've ever seen typically are a largish hole, about that big around, with a grate over the top. And the reason it's that big, when I say a grate, I should say a mesh of some sort. But the reason it's that big is to, of course, you don't want your coal falling through. That's what the mesh is for. But the reason it's so big is to get more airflow through. And that over time, you end up getting clinkers that get in the way. Whether that's, you know, metal that burnt off your piece, or the aggregate that's in the coal, you know, if you don't have particularly clean coal. And what I mean by that isn't the oxymoron, but that, you know, you might have sand in your coal, or you might have other gravelly bits in there. And all of that ends up getting to temperature, melting, re-aggregating down below the heat zone. I don't seem to have those problems. Mine is neither a side tweer nor one of the types of tweers that I've just talking about, a bottom blast tweer. But instead, it's what the company referred to as a dial-a-tweer, which means it's got a long pipe with holes this size. I think it's about a ½ inch in diameter, maybe less. I end up running my forge with only 2 of them open, which isn't really open. The first one ends up getting shut down a little bit to force the air further back into the tweer instead of it all coming out the front. But we can think of it as like having two holes open. And every now and then I have to clear the air path, but that's mainly because the coal gets in the way. Had more of a problem with that happening with the charcoal than I do with coal. Possibly because I really don't see much in the way of ash when it comes to coal. Not saying there's no ash, just not as much as I see with charcoal. And I can't even be sure that it's coal ash that I see, simply because I do start every one of my fires with a bit of charcoal. Well, happy Saturday to you, Shy Hoof. I don't think I've seen you chat in my channel before. Shy Hoof, up on Twitch. Remind me if I've met you before, Shy Hoof, and if not, introduce yourself a little bit. Oh, that's right, I was going to bring this over here. You can't see what I was doing there anyway. Put it on this way. And then lock her in real good and push back some of this metal so it looks less like a grape and more like a ball. We'll flatten it out a little bit in the process, but then it'll get squished back again. You can see, flattened out a little bit. Yeah, now it has shoulders I didn't want it to have. It's also shoved off to the side a little bit. That's no big deal, but it's looking a bit less like a long grape and more like a ball. So we'll work that around, get it hot again, bring it back over to the anvil to do that. Oh, Jamie! Holy shit! You have been on here once before. I didn't remember seeing it. Seeing you coming from Twitch, though. I think it was a quick visit from LinkedIn. Nice to have you visit me. How's life been treating you? If I recall correctly, you and I have both had very different career paths than the ones we started with. Both of us, I think, in software engineering. Although I think, didn't you go to a management path right now, right? Yeah, I wouldn't expect most people to stick around in LinkedIn. LinkedIn has those live things happen all the time, and I'm one of those people that see my notifications announcing them and then ignore them. So I didn't expect LinkedIn would be a place people would consume my streams so much as become aware that they exist. So yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't even put up on the screen anywhere about LinkedIn here. Only the main streaming channels. Yeah, Disney Imagineering, nice. Yeah, a lifetime ago indeed. Now I'm over at Lightbend, helping folks use their technology to build the cloud, basically build applications on the cloud, build pieces of the cloud. Both Scala and Akka being the main technologies. I've thought about going the management route from time to time because I really do enjoy fostering people's, growth. But I understand so often that that's not as much of what you would be doing as a manager as I would like to do. So I stick doing this. Mentoring people, guiding their architectures, etc. But while it is a huge difference from tech support, in some ways I'm still doing the same kind of thing I did while I was there, helping people do the best work they can do. There we go. Absolutely love Scala. I mean, most of my career was built on .NET, thanks to my intro at Symantec in Microsoft technologies. But then I moved over to doing Java with Akka. Fell in love with that technology stack. Not Java, Akka, Lightbend, and that's how I ended up landing at Lightbend. I don't really care for Java. There's so many things about the way Java was built that leave it so similar to C#, and yet so many ways broken compared to C#. Scala seemed to fix a lot of that. Nominum? Nominum. Wow. There we go. Yeah, so for those that have jumped on to the video and heard us talking a bit of tech stuff, that's what I do to pay the bills. I'm always happy to say more about it, but let's get back to blacksmithing here and get this blob looking more round, centered on the thing. Continue hitting it on all the sides. We're getting there. Looking more and more ball-shaped as I go. All right, let's heat her up again. Have you been watching the whole time to hear me talking about why I don't use a glove? Because I did bring that up earlier in the stream. And yet, also highly recommend that one of your first tools that you get is a pair of welding gloves. Oh no. Looks like my camera woman's almost back. Got to take you outside so you can see who I'm talking about. Everybody say hi to Rosie and Tom. Hi, Rosie. Rosie's going to come over here and start nudging at my table, and all my camera stuff's going to start moving. Oh, she walked by. I got lucky. Instead, she's visiting me there. What I am working is the second of two railroad spikes. This is the first one. You can see I got a ball end on that one. It's also not quite perfect, but I'm pretty proud of it all the same. And we'll get the ball end done on the second one. That was a second railroad spike. And unlike my last sets of tongs, I haven't overstressed any aspect of this. I seem to have done it right this time. Got my forge temperatures hot enough so that any place that would have been a stress riser ended up getting forge welded in. So yeah, this is the second half of the flat jaw tongs I'm making out of a railroad spike. Up here on top of my forge are some old things I'd worked on that I might get back to once I have flat jaw tongs, but ended up breaking off or burning off the end of my leaf and burning off the end of my leaf and burning off the end of my leaf off of this railroad spike. Actually, I think only 2 of these came off of this railroad spike. But that was me learning how hot things can get and how fast. And then this was another railroad spike I was working into a tong blank that A, I got too hot at one point, and B, did it wrong. Just plain old did it wrong. So I'm not even gonna finish this one. Not sure what I'll do with it yet. But they're reminders of up on top of my forge of how mistakes are easily made when one starts gabbing too much. Actually burned off the tip of my leaf today, but fortunately did not end up ruining the whole thing. Just made my creation of my daily or my weekly leaf take a little longer. Here's that right now. So keep those things around so you don't continue to make mistakes. At least not the same mistake every time. Make new mistakes. Learn from those. But yeah, the PPE thing, I do have it. I do recommend having a pair of gloves. And there is a point in not using them all the time. And that is as a constant reminder of the first rule of blacksmithing, which is all metal is hot. Treat it with the respect it's due. And the reason I don't recommend people wear gloves all the time is I had a friend of mine out trying her hand at this, and she would have the gloves on both hands and constantly be forgetting about the first rule of blacksmithing, and would burn little marks in the gloves. But even more importantly, as she's sitting there holding it to inspect her work, which that's not how it works, she would actually accidentally touch herself. And she was wearing a coat. It was a cold day. She was wearing a coat with a nylon type material or a plastic material, And so it just kept burning. And at one point, she actually caught on fire. So we had to basically quickly pat that out. She just kept forgetting it. It is hard to forget that all metal is hot if your hand keeps feeling that heat creep up. And so there comes a point where, yes, you absolutely must wear a glove. It's definitely smart to have the gloves because there are times where you have to be close in on the metal and the heat of it, like when you're using a chisel or some sort of cutting or marking tool, a punch. You might have to be in close to that hot metal, so put the glove on. If you are working a piece of metal like this one, like I am, where the heat is where it's too short to hold away from the heat, then you have to put the glove on. But by that time, you've already had a respect for it, hopefully, and can go from there. So definitely have the PPE and be ready to use the PPE. Know that it's an important part of everything. I do wear the smock, for example, because the forge scale pops off all the time. And when it does, it pops off hot. And it'd be best if it doesn't hit my clothes and cause a problem. I also wear fire retardant clothing on my pants, my shirt. If I'm wearing short sleeves, I'm trying to prevent doing anything that would cause any of that metal to come and hit me in the arm or anything like that. But I'll also make sure that the short sleeve shirt is 100% cotton, so that it can't have a spark catch me on fire. So it's important to have your PPE. The one piece of PPE today, I'm chagrined that I didn't remember, and I actually went in the room with the express purpose to remember to grab them, but then got distracted and decided I needed to waterproof my boots with some mink oil. Was my glasses that I wear when I'm out here smithing, because they now have a pair of shields on the side to prevent anything that might spark and bounce up towards my eye. Glasses alone are PPE, but having the shields adds that extra bit of protection that has almost no cost in having them. So definitely wear your safety glasses. John Switzer reminds you that at the end of every one of his videos. And I'm never going to say anything against what John says. Man is brilliant, and just a really good human being, and an excellent smith in my mind, anyway. If for no other reason than he wants to share his craft, but he also happens to be pretty damn good at it, and humble about it. In case you don't know who John Switzer is, you probably could find him easily enough if you did a search on YouTube, but his channel is known as Black Bear Forge. So yeah, definitely having personal protective equipment is important. Even more important is to have a respect for the risks involved in what you're doing and act accordingly. An example of that is I haven't just run right out and picked up an oxygen tank to set out here with my propane tanks. Something I will need to do, and get an appropriate torch to go with it and get it all set up, because I don't have enough knowledge to know what the risks are and take the proper precautions. I have to go spend some time at a welding shop and let them teach me something. I'm getting the wrong part of the metal hot. Once they teach me something, I know what the risks are, I'll know what the right precautions to take are, and then I'll get set up, at which point then I can return to the task of finishing my mother's shepherd's hook plant hanger to put graveside. and let the fire cool off too much. You know, folks, a lot of folks have electric blowers that run on low to prevent their fires from going out while they're forging or while they're doing other things around the shop that's related to the work they're doing. Of course, I have just got the hand crank because I haven't bothered to bring out a blower that I have and see if it would suit the purpose, and if it would, or of course more importantly, if it would quickly drain my battery that I have out here. My power source being an EcoFlow Delta. But it's so easy to have just the right airflow here that I haven't really felt it to be all that important to do. It's also not a hard task for me to sit here and crank it either. So I just haven't done it. And now I don't think I will. I would go through more fuel if I did also. So yeah, the only benefit I would get is when I'm not constantly being back and forth into the fire. I have to spend more time getting the fire stoked back up again. I'm not in a hurry. I don't do this as a profession, so there's not a real good reason for me to That's more central. Cool. All right, that looks very nicely ball shaped. There's still quite a lot of facets on it. But I'm pretty happy with it. We can continue to planish it, which is basically striking it when it's not forging temperature, to add more and more facets to it, and in doing so make it harder to see the facets. It'll seem more round for it, and much like the other one, I've got this little divot here I'm not too worried about. True, it's not perfect. And if you want perfect, as Alex Steele will say, make it perfect. But right now, what I really want is to be able to say, I've made progress in my skills. And I have definitely made progress in my skills. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. All right. We need to round up an area, the area that I'll actually hold. I need to pull out the other one so I can see how far up I need to round the metal. And this might be a time where it's time to grab a glove. Look at that. It's even about the same shape, size. That came out really, really decent. I'm happy with that. And if I want to get it even better, I can stand at the grinder for a little bit. I like to do forge to finish because it means I'm getting more and more skillful at what I'm doing. But I don't mind standing at a grinder a little bit if it means I can have something that feels nicer in my hand. We can see that one of these came out a little bit longer than the other. No big deal. It won't make a difference in the actual usability of the tool. And what I do need to do is note where I'm rounding it to. So let's get a tool for marking that. The goal is to round there, bring it around, round there, round there, and you might not be able to see what it is I'm seeing and why I'm marking an arc like that. But if you were to see, I've taken the corners off here to blend it in. I'll end up knocking the corners off all the way, but right about those places is where it's actually in there, is where the blending happens. This one seems further down, but I can actually take it up to there, be more consistent. That one did go way up there. So those are the generalized points. I can then, try to improve my skill again, be more consistent on this one than I was on the last one. Let's see what we can do. A lot deeper in the fire, so there's a good chance the glove is going to come out here. Matter of fact, let's just get it ready. Thank you. For those who are coming along on this trek with me, trying to decide if it's a thing you would like to try, I hope that you see that the whole point isn't to be perfect, but improve, gradually improve. I mean, in the long term, do you want to be perfect? Well, that's up to you. And if you do, make it perfect. But in the meantime, take the journey. It's always worth taking the journey, mainly because what else are you going to do with your time? No, but truly, take the journey and share it with somebody. Whether this is the journey you want to take, or some other craft is the journey you want to take, or if it's literally going and meeting people in the world, take the journey. You'll always gain something from it. Even if it's a perspective of, you don't want to do that again. That strange food, that foreign concept. You gotta know if you never want to do it again, if you don't ever take the journey. I mean, think about it. Some schlub out there took the journey of getting underneath a massive beast of the field, grabbed a hold of some odd-looking parts of the animal, expressed a sustenance from it, and said, that's not good enough. Let's let it sit for a while, let airborne particulates fall in it, see it curdle, stir it a bunch, seal it up, let it be like that for a while, and then we'll eat it. Went too deep into the fire. That's not the area I want to get hot. That's a heck of a journey to decide cheese is good, and now we want it on as many pizzas as we can consume in our lifetime. But thankfully somebody took that journey. Because I bet that even if you're lactose intolerant, you probably like cheese. Let's see if we can find where I marked those things. Well, let's start back here. Knock off some corners. You'll probably discover that I took it up too high, but we'll see in a minute. Go get my comparator. Yep. Nope, actually, I eyeballed it pretty good. All right, but no higher than that. Which means, let's go ahead and get the other side of that hot, and then bring them together. And yeah, that is getting hot. I'm glad I have the glove because I don't want to hold it necessarily right there at the tip. So where my finger would reach up, I would probably end up burning myself. Pull this back just a hair so you can see what a little more of what I'm working on there. There we go. Honestly, I think the blower, the electric blower that I would have brought out here would be overpowered for this tweer as well. I actually have to slow down my rotating of the crank so that I don't send too much air through and move the heat zone too high out of the fuel. go ahead and bring the corners off further back here. Do it on the other side as well. Flip it around, blend them together. An anvil pushes back, a good anvil pushes back with almost exactly the same amount of force as you are putting down. Various anvils will have that effect at various levels. So therefore, when I'm striking this corner, it's automatically forging for me the opposite corner. As I was mentioning before, that's why if you're not precise about your blows coming straight down on the corner with the one corner over the other corner, the bar will just twist on you. And whether it's twisting your hand or, more literally, the bar twist while you're holding it steady. So we're getting close. You can see that I have got the corners knocked off. We still have flats all along this edge. I'm going to knock the corners off a little more down on this end towards the ball. Sounds like my chickens are busy laying eggs. They all cluck together as distraction from the one that can't be moving at the moment. Yeah, blacksmithing is all just either building a gut instinct for or having an awareness of Newtonian physics. Now, for those who can't go get themselves an anvil out the gate, first off, that's not true. You can get a very inexpensive anvil. Roy of Christ-Centered Ironworks has been giving away anvils. Acacio, I think, is the brand name. Anvil that you can get for something like $75 at either Harbor Freight or even from Amazon. Are they good? They're not the professional grade anvil I have sitting here, but I also went and spent stupid amount of money on this anvil. Number one, because I wanted a good anvil, and number two, because it's hard to find used good anvils at a reasonable price. So if you're going to pay a stupid price, why not buy a new anvil? And number three, because I respect Alex Steele and I wanted to support his business. So I bought one of his anvils. And if you go from there, you'll see there's stupid amount of money. You don't have to spend a stupid amount of money. For the truck bed, I assume you mean? Or do you mean to cover the whole truck up? You can instead spend a little bit of money to get you started on your craft. Or, like I said, you can go find a block of metal and it will do a similar trick. What I will say is, the heavier piece of metal you can get, the better. The heavier thing you mount it to, the better. Okay. Got it. There we go. Let's get in here, knock off those last corners. Get the ball back where it should be. Blend them in. In an upcoming live stream, I'm actually going to build a J-bod, or just a box of dirt, forge during the live stream so you can see what is involved. It came to me the other day that it's like, I'm telling you, it's an inexpensive way to get started. I can just demo what's involved. What I'm doing right now is just dressing it all up, getting things lined up nicely. It's not perfectly round yet. I haven't bothered to finish making it perfectly round. I just want to knock off those corners. I'm going to go ahead and push in those corners just a little bit more. They should be about the same face as the corners should be about the same width of face as what's left on the sides and the top. So I have to give it a little bit of a pivot to make that happen. And then I can actually finish the rounding aspect. It may not be a circle rounding. It may be an oval, and that'd be perfectly fine for what I'm doing here, because it's just sitting in my hands, so an oval would actually be a decent shape. Honestly, it doesn't need to be rounded any more than that, but I just want to have that little bit smoother. And what you want is what you aim for. Just a bunch of discs, right? Yeah, J-bod, just a box of dirt is the blacksmithing equivalent, and it literally is. You frame up a wooden box, and you're thinking, wood, doesn't that burn? Well, that's why you're filling it with a bunch of dirt. And the dirt will soak up the heat. It'll never reach the wood. And I'm going to do it with found wood, pallets. You can just break apart the pallets or cut apart the pallets. What I'll probably do. That way I don't have to worry about removing nails. Maybe some scrap plywood that I have laying around from other projects. But if you don't have scrap plywood, you could actually just continue to use the pallets. Just put your pallet slats closer together after you've cut them apart. Fill it with a bunch of dirt. The best dirt to use is, frankly, playground sand. But again, that's spending money. I'm going to show you. You can literally just dig it up in your backyard. Fill it with that. There we go. it is trying to twist on me because I'm purposefully not striking it quite the way. And in this case, I actually am having an oblong effect, so I have to twist it back or else it's going to be a nuisance. So we come over here, we grab it in here. What you didn't see me do is just put it in the vise and give it the twist back that I wanted. There we go, straight across. Give it a brush, we'll take a look. So this brush is known as a butcher's block brush. It has multiple uses. But in our case, we're leveraging the fact that these are literally spring steel. And they spring and also bite on top of steel that's not spring steel, that has been hardened, that is. And can actually cause a smoothing effect, as it also pops off any scale that's still attached to the metal you're working. So it's just like taking a machine version. Bring it over here so you can see it. A wire wheel on your angle grinder or whatever, and using it on there. But I don't have to waste my battery for it on situations like this where I can literally just get on it. I like it. Looks good. That's ready to be used. If I wanted to, I could smooth it just a little bit more, but honestly, I think that actually looks better than my other one does right now. Let me pull it out. Might come back in here and dress this one up a little bit. Dress them both up just a little bit by making the sides a little flatter, more consistent, but not a lot. I like it. And you can see the rounding. It was already just a little bit longer. The rounding probably made it just a little bit longer than that, but no big deal. There we go. That is what I call a day's effort. Well, you know, unless of course you're trying to make a living at it. And then that's probably not even close to a day's effort, but that will suffice for me today for this live stream. Thanks for joining. And you even got to see me use the PPE I had talked about in the appropriate time when I feel that it's best to use it. So, hope you enjoyed this. Maybe even learned something. Go on the journey. Bring somebody else along with you. Don't be exclusionary as to who it is you bring with. Love and light.